everyone. We've all been waiting for Mark Passio. Okay. I am going to tell you that last night I realized that my inauthentic woman has been at battle with my authentic woman. And it was really helpful because I could give myself credit for the authentic part, and I could kind of recognize the inauthentic part for the first time. So now I can have a little more peace between those two parts of myself, because one of them might have been inherited from my society, and fuck that shit. So, we have this brilliant man here. My husband Bob and I, we went back to the hotel room, and Bob said, "That guy is a genius." It's true. Really, all of us have so much appreciation for you, Mark, and what you have done, and the ability for you to communicate that to us in a coherent manner. So without further ado, Mr. Mark, wonderful, beautiful Passio.
So much. You guys are so great.
You're great.
So let's get into part 2 of the Unholy Feminine Neo-Feminism and the Satanic Epi-Eugenics Agenda. Yesterday I went through many of the methodologies that the Neo-Feminism agenda uses against women and men to divide the genders against each other and incite the gender war to weaken the entire population. I called these methods the war against the goddess because they are a direct attack on the authentic sacred feminine that both women and men really carry within themselves. So this part is called the war against the goddess continued. After this, I'll be going through solutions that I consider we can employ to heal the divide between the genders. One of the next methods of manipulation I want to talk about is the concept of male privilege, this myth that is propagated by the neo-feminist ideology. So-called male privilege is the neo-feminist idea that men are somehow given distinct social advantages over women based primarily upon their gender, just because they are men. Now, I don't know how many people in the audience or out there watching on the internet actually believe this, but I'll tell you one thing. Nobody ever gave me anything just because I'm a man. As a matter of fact, I've really kind of noticed the exact opposite, quite in fact, that sometimes open hostility can be shown because you're a masculine man in many instances, and things can be withheld. I certainly never experienced this concept of being privileged because I'm male. Looking at these couple of photos here, women making this assumption are obviously really not too much keeping in reality, in line with reality as far as I'm concerned. If we look at the percentages of certain aspects of society, you look at deaths by combat, 97% of men, 90% of people who suffer combat death are men, while only 3% are women. Industrial deaths and accidents are suffered by, that comprise 93% male deaths and only 7% female deaths. Homicide victims, 3/4 to 1/4, 76% men versus 24% women. Suicide victims, it's an 80-20 split. And in custody battles after divorce, usually, the winner of a custody suit is women by a margin of 84% to 16%. The corporate world is largely driven by women insofar as purchases of goods and services. We talked about that when we talked about rampant consumerism yesterday. 80% of consumption performed by women in society, females in society. The numbers that I got recently said that it was closer to an 85-15 breakdown, as I talked about yesterday. In politics, 54% of women are voters, 60% of the welfare recipients are female. Infrastructural workers, meaning people who actually build all of the infrastructure and technology that we use on a daily basis, are 80% of those are male. 90% of inventors and innovators are male, and 65% of the tax-paying population, which I think should go down to 0, of course, but 65% currently feeding into that system are male. So, you know, it's difficult to see by a lot of these ratios and a lot of these statistics how there could possibly be an actual real thing known as male privilege in society. I personally don't see it as anything that is real. I see it as an invented concept to further try to drive a wedge between men and women in our culture. Women and order followers. This is another huge dynamic that has to be understood when it comes to the Neo-Feminism agenda and the conditioned state of many inauthentic females. Most order followers are men. This is what I talked about last year at the conference, okay? Order followers and the destruction of the sacred feminine within themselves. Order following men are the creators, the boots on the ground creators of what I call the dark New World Order, the system of human enslavement, because they're the ones who are actually doing the coercive action and the immoral, violent behavior against other human beings. But women consistently support dominators and order followers throughout their entire careers and lives. How many women support what these dominators and order followers do? I mean, they have mothers who support them and say that they're proud of their jobs and professions. They have sisters, they have wives, they have daughters, and these women in their lives continuously support them. Now, how many of their wives, mothers, sisters, or daughters would continue to sanction the behaviors of order-following men if they were to wake up to the agenda that they're being used for and what they're actually being used to create, the type of slavery system that they're being employed to create? You know, how many women would actually say, no, I will not take part in what you're doing by supporting you in any way or even having a relationship with you in any way? You know, some of the memes here show what the problems are. You know, supporting the troops, not always logical. You know, it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. What a great quote. And I would say it's difficult to get a woman to stop supporting a man who's doing an immoral behavior when his salary is contributing to benefit in her life and comfort in her life. See, that's what people have to be willing to walk away from, even if it creates temporary discomfort or temporary chaos in their lives. And that takes courage to do. Women's support, and again, I want to qualify, we're talking about the inauthentic woman throughout the ages, the mind-controlled woman, the socially engineered woman. The inauthentic woman has traditionally sided with conquerors, dominators, and tyrants, both during and after wars throughout history, flocking to the side of the victor or whoever is currently in control of the resources has been a historical pattern for conditioned women for thousands of years. We see this pattern over and over and over again. Women have been conditioned to simply go with the winner, with whoever is happening to control resources at any given time, in any given geographic region. I mean, after World War II in Germany, when the troops of the Allies came in and displaced the Nazis, women who were, there are countless reports that women who were with the Nazis one day were then, you know, sleeping with Allied soldiers the next day, as if nothing had ever happened, and it was just a replacement of the physical male body that they happened to be around, because they were now in control of the region and in control of the resources of the region. And, you know, of course, a lot of atrocities happen in warfare times, and, you know, there's accounts that starvation was occurring, and they starved out a lot of the troops, the Nazi troops after the war, after their surrender. And, you know, in general, women didn't want to, I guess, be subject to that in many cases and just went with the winning side. They didn't stay loyal to the people who were defeated, that they had supported right up until the very bitter end, but immediately went with the conquerors or the new winners. And again, I would say this is not a normal thing for them to do. People will make the argument that's just a natural, normal thing. No, it's a socially conditioned thing that they've been taught to do. That's a learned behavior. Androgyny is one of the other main attacks of neo-feminism. It's a methodology to destabilize a population. Another tactic of neo-feminism, epi-eugenics, is the deliberate androgenization of society. Androgenization slowly homogenizes and gradually erodes the distinctiveness of both genders, of both male and female. When genders and gender roles become skewed and blended, strong men and strong women sharing cohesive familial bonds become an endangered species. As a result of that breakdown of the familial dynamic between men and women, society becomes weakened at a very fundamental level. And why is that? You know, and again, this is not an attack on any alternative sexualities out there, okay? I want to make that very clear. This is explaining that the vast majority of human sexual interaction is between men and women, and when you androgynize that, or you gradually erode the distinctiveness between the genders, and you're breaking down that familial bond that they can create together, you're weakening a society, because you are ultimately going to create not only a divide between man and woman, but a divide between parents and children as a result of that breakdown, of that familial breakdown. So then that translates down to the next generation, especially when it comes to good parenting in many cases. Hand in hand with androgenization is again, the feminization of the male gender, okay? So we see the metrosexual in society, and we see what is now known as the lumbersexual. Let me explain the lumbersexual to people, okay? The lumbersexual is the type of man who really doesn't have inherent masculine traits, but wants to portray them anyway, wants to fake them or feign them. So he'll dress up like a, quote, real man might look, or a masculine man might look, a genuine man. And, you know, this is a trend going around in hipster culture right now for people who are familiar with it. The lumbersexuals are all over my neighborhood in South Philadelphia, everywhere. This meme says, "I'm so glad I don't have to actually hunt. I have no fucking clue where gluten-free tacos live." You know, so. Yeah, I mean, it's comical. It's you know, funny, but it's true. It's like, you know, we're seeing this proxy of trying to be a man, not the real thing. You know, and again, I'm not saying everybody has to be Mr. Macho. Don't twist my words or take it to an extreme that I'm not saying. Saying, you know, there is such a thing as genuine masculinity. And, you know, instead of embracing that, you know, most men are becoming overly feminized. This is, again, part of the agenda through food, through medication, through things in the water supply and in the air. You know, it's basically depleting testosterone levels in men, as I talked about yesterday, and creating this effeminized male who then is trying to overcompensate by looking masculine, even though he doesn't actually have those characteristics within him. And, you know, women are being conditioned to be attracted to that type of emasculated male as well. Some of the other side effects of things that neo-feminism propagates is the types of negative repercussions that we're seeing in things like social media, you know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, etc. Social media is furthering the agenda to create division between men and women. And I mean, you could see these types of arguments and thread and flame wars all over social media. Many conditioned women are now employing social media as a mechanism for what I call collecting men. Okay, they're basically creating like shopping lists of men to find out what they can do for them and how much attention that they can garner from them. They often will, this inauthentic form of woman will actually view men as a commodity on a grocery item checklist, and view the social media outlet that she's using to do this and to get these things done for her as like a shopping venue, like going into a store. Social media websites have further been employed to destroy real social interaction. This is the main thing that they're being used to do in this agenda. You know, you're not having people meet in person anymore. They're just talking online. And, you know, they're not actually developing real social interactive skills. You know, they're just interacting virtually. And it's done to destroy real social interaction between people, especially men and women. And also this, the secondary effect that this has is it emboldens rudeness between people. Because the way people talk to each other online, they would never talk to each other like that in person, you know? They would definitely think twice about it, you know, doing that, you know, physically right in front of another person. There's little incentive, very little incentive to be nice to somebody when you can get away with saying anything in the virtual online world. This is part of how women are using social media and part of some of the ancillary effects that social media is having in the form of driving a wedge between men and women. The so-called millennials, the millennial generation, the millennial, quote, woman, these are the children of the post-baby boomer generation and were largely raised by state-run educational system, television, and pop culture. They've been conditioned by these systems to behave in ways that are complacent, compliant, unquestioning, unthinking, and narcissistic. They absorb large amounts of television programming, consume poisonous genetically modified food, are obsessed with escapist pursuits, and can only have vapid, inane conversations and express an extreme lack of concern or interest in real-world issues. They are the absolute dream of the social engineer controllers. The reason I brought this up is because I've had a little bit of interaction with millennial women over the last few years, and when I see women of this age group, they're all sadly, very sadly, almost universally alike in the patterns of behavior and the tendencies that they express. I actually had a young woman just pre-college age, like maybe senior in high school age, like 17, 18 years old, say to me, directly to my face in person, I would prefer that someone else do my thinking for me. Actually made that statement to my face. You know, this is how conditioned they have this younger generation. This is what the school system is doing to young people, especially young women. It's seen as uncool to care about anything serious, any topic that is serious. The conversation has to be as inane as humanly possible as it can be made, particularly among this generational group. There's a common phrase in America, in Western culture in particular, that ignorance is bliss. I've said before, ignorance is death. It'll lead to our destruction. But in the ancient Egyptian tradition or the Kemetic tradition, there was a common phrase about ignorance, and it said, ignorance is evil. It is the essence of evil to ignore truth. And I couldn't agree with that statement more. The consciousness of the so-called millennial woman has been programmed from birth by the state thanks to the complacency of their parents' generation, a generation largely that surrendered their freedom, abandoned health and nutrition for quote unquote convenience, traded their spiritual and moral values for those that they garnered from sitcom television, and handed their children over to the corporatized state where their minds were molded like clay into the types of inauthentic males and inauthentic females that we're discussing here today. Another technique that is being employed, particularly on the religious side of this agenda, because again, there's a political side to this agenda, a social side to the agenda, and a religious side to this agenda, is called Neo-Puritanicalism. And this is rampant in our society. It's a very, very unhealthy attitude toward human sexuality. A religious puritanical mindset is being slowly reinfused into Western culture by religious fundamentalism. Such religionists are demonizing consensual sexual relationships between adults and pushing the notion that normal human sexuality is somehow sinful or even evil. They try to convince people that everyone in American culture is obsessed with sex when in fact, all people in American culture are obsessed with is the idea of sex, but not the act itself. This is due to the level of sexual repression that is taking place within our culture. Every westernized culture is actually more sexually repressed now than ever before in its history. And this dynamic is becoming worse and worse due to the growing influence of this neo-puritanical ideology. This religious and cultural engineering to demonize a healthy attitude toward normal human sexuality, this is religious and cultural engineering to demonize a healthy attitude toward normal human sexuality and to reduce the human population through voluntary abstinence. Now again, don't twist my words and make it into something extreme that I'm not saying. I'm not telling people go out and have rampant, wild, promiscuous sex with everyone indiscriminately. I'm just saying that the attitude toward a healthy libido and a healthy sex life is constantly repressed in our culture. And this is it's a fundamentalist religious influence. I could tell you a little anecdote about this story. A while back, someone, I can't remember where it was or who said it to me, but I was in a discussion with a woman, and she said something to the effect that for women to have any kind of a healthy sex life that is not deliberately being withheld by them, okay, is akin to someone standing outside of a bakery and giving cakes away for free, and how would the people who own the bakery feel about that? Now think about that for a minute. Think about that anecdote for a minute. She said women having sex and having a healthy sex life is very much like somebody standing outside of a bakery giving away free cake. Okay? Now think about how unhealthy of an attitude that is about the normal human sexual experience that is supposed to be about bonding with another person, emotions shared between another person, physicality shared between another person. All